Yeah, just try to keep as close to 20 minutes as possible. That's the
No
only thing.
worries.
Yeah, if you do you control time or you want me to do that?
Oh, I've got it. I've got it here on my, not a
Okay.
problem.
So yeah, when I disappear, just count to five in your head and start. Okay?
Well, you can tell me because I can't see you. I can only see my screen.
Okay, I will tell you. So have a good keynote and I'm disappearing now.
Thanks. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Being on Mission. My name is Dave Parker. I'm from Seattle, Washington, but I'm coming to you from Cairo, Egypt today. So thanks for letting me be part of your event. A quick note about me: I'm a 5-time founder, board member, and venture investor. So I've raised $12 million and I've exited 85 million. I've also was the senior VP of programs for Startup Weekend. So if you remember Startup Weekend before we sold it to Techstars, it was the merger of Startup Weekend and Startup America, which formed Up Global. We did events in 120 countries worldwide. In our last full year, there 74,000 attendees came to one of our events across the globe. I'm also the author of Trajectory Startup, Ideation to Product Market Fit, and I've had over 15 exits over the last 20 years of my time being a startup founder, board member, and advisor. What does it mean to be on mission? And I want to break it down into two categories for you today: being on mission for the company, and then being on mission for you as part of the team. From a company perspective, a mission statement is all about the action oriented statement of purpose of the organization. And you don't always have to have this nailed down before you have product market fit. If you're a services company, you definitely need to have it nailed down in advance. But if you're a product company, know that your product market fit goal should come before anything else. Let's face it, if you don't have product market fit, you're not going to have a company. So even though you may have a great culture, the company's going to die. Early on, a mission statement is the short summary of your company's purpose. It's something you should take time to figure out and do for your startup. A personal mission statement, on the other hand, is really what defines your values of who you are and how you individually define success. So stay focused on that and it'll meet your long term goals. So the alignment of those two goals sometimes are a challenge. We hope they align from the start, and you sign up for this big vision where the startup can really help grow and really go change the world. They're likely to have challenges over time, however, and know that the longer you're with the company, you're more likely to diverge and go two separate directions. And honestly, that's okay. From an organization perspective, remember that organizations are fundamentally about people, which is both good and a challenge. Early organizations, the teams are very focused on having generalists, and you'll get to wear many hats. If you like living in a world of ambiguity, you will thrive in early startup organizations. Later organizations, however, will require specialists on the team, and you'll start to see layers of management and middle management that get added to the team. That both creates opportunities for you and challenges to grow as you choose what direction you want to go with your career within that organization. Keep in mind, startups are like a sports team, they're not like a family. Early startups sometimes will think about themselves as a family right up until the time that there's a layoff or a riff or somebody gets fired. Impact players can also bring overhead to the team. Sometimes there's a prima donna on the team that doesn't play well with others, and that'll be a challenge for early teams. So keep in mind, you're more like a sports team than a family. Those impact players, too, have to make decisions of what's best for them and what's best for the team. So the example there is Messi, right, who left for Barcelona at 13, had his big coming out at 17, but not a lot of people talk about that time between 13 and 17 of him getting ready. Ultimately, he made that move to Paris Saint Germain in 2021. People will move around, and that's okay. I think of startups are a little bit more like an expansion team. In Seattle, where I'm from, we have this thing called a Kraken, which is the Seattle new hockey team. The hockey team has no history together. There's a draft where a bunch of really great players get pulled together into a team, but they've never actually done stuff together before. That's a little bit more like a startup. But this isn't about a sports analogy, it's about people. In the early days, you're planning through scarcity. You have limitations. You have limitations of resources, limitation of cash, limitations of the number of people on your team. So figuring out how to prioritize the things you need to prioritize is super, super important. It's also about doing the work. So the awards that come with being impact players are not recognized till years later, and no one's an overnight success. Successful startups always have outcomes that exceed the inputs. And over the long haul, the company is going to need to get funded, and then finally it's going to need to make a profit. But early days, you focus on growth, and profitability will follow. Sometimes that means taking risks and failing, which is always hard as an organization, but risks are required to have outsized returns. So you have to take risks, but they're calculated risks. They're not risks of reckless abandon, right? So you're making judgments and risks based on what you think the reward will be for that risk. And I spoke of overnight success, but I want to give you an example. Many of you know DocuSign based in Seattle. DocuSign was a 17-year overnight success story. Keep in mind, when Tom, who's a good friend of mine, started the company in 2003, digital signatures weren't actually legal. They weren't illegal, but they weren't actually legal. So people look at the company, they went public, the stock went incredibly well, and the investors had a massive return. But that company was a 16-year, 17-year overnight success story, like any amazing startup. Meanwhile, from a founder perspective, you're thinking about fundraising. And I pulled this clip from a friend of mine that he spent a lot of money going to an executive MBA program at Harvard University. And you'll note here that it's first principles of cash. More cash is better than less. Cash now is better than cash later. And you'll note the last one is don't run out of cash. And from a fundraising perspective, as the founder, that's totally where you are living every day. To do that effectively, you're going to need to tell the story. You have to cast vision, you have to tell why it matters, and you need to include the team in the story so they can help you explain the mission and tell that story. So, where will you contribute to this enterprise? As a founder 5 times, you're always bringing on a team and you're always trying to look for amazing people. So hopefully you got here for purpose. It wasn't just you hated your last job and you were running away. Hopefully you were drawn to the vision and mission of the company. But ultimately, it doesn't matter how you got here. What really matters is what are you going to do with it and where will you go? So, how will you make the most of it, the opportunity? So, encouraging you in a few areas here about you and this startup, be curious first. I think great startup team members in the early days are always curious. It doesn't mean you always need to have the answer, but it means you always need to be curious. Look for ways that you can contribute where your output exceeds your input and bring your best 8 hours a day. Ultimately, the challenge here is you can't really have a side hustle and contribute to a startup. Both are super demanding. I would say be ready to be part of the solution, but you don't have to have the answer to all of the problems. Just know that you need to bring the problem and highlight it and help be part of the solution, but you don't have to have all of the answers. Before I started my first startup, one of the things I did was I spent time in every department, finance and operations, so I could learn the areas that I didn't know about. And I would encourage you to do that for you as well. Find areas where you can check the boxes, learn new skills, take the risks and step into new roles. Even if you're not asked to do it, use that as an opportunity to push yourself to grow. What are the conclusions? There's a lot of work for a company to be successful. The timing has to be right, the product has to be right, the market has to be right, and the team has to be right. You may not always agree, but you can commit. One of the principles from Amazon.com is when you come into a meeting, you don't have to agree with everybody else in the meeting, but coming out of the meeting, you have to commit. And you're committing to taking the decision and moving it forward to have that right outcome. There will be mistakes and failures, and you're going to have to live with that. If you're uncomfortable with making mistakes, or you're uncomfortable with an organization that makes mistakes, that may be an issue of perfection for you, but know that organizations have to take risks and they're going to make mistakes. Be part of the process, engage early, and help find new opportunities to grow the company. Ultimately, a team on a mission can change their corner of the world. I recently had a chance to join a venture capital organization out of Atlanta, Georgia. It's two African American women who invest exclusively in Black and brown women. They started off as a $5 million exploratory fund, and it's ballooned into a $25 million venture capital fund that invests in early stage seed and Series A rounds. The reason it exploded was for all the wrong reasons. George Floyd and all the opportunities there that were very negative, but the positive outcome of it was a fund that is 25 or $30 million that invests in Black and brown women. When I was approached with it, it answered the question, oh, hell yeah, I want to be part of this. I can help change my corner of the world. And I would include you to think about, encourage you to think about how what you're making the decision to do today will help change the corner of your world. Thanks very much for having me. Enjoy the event. Look forward to doing it in person there again in the future. Thanks very much.
So I guess you're done, right?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay, congrats. Finally, you've done that.
Woo, we got it done.
Yeah. So thanks a lot.
You bet.
Yeah, our team is clapping in the back here.
Oh, nice. So
Yeah.
I'll record the teaser for it probably tomorrow. When is the event scheduled?
So it's 18th to 21st of October, but I'm not sure when is your recording.
No worries. Let me know and I'll promote it on social media.
Yeah, sure. I can send you the recording of yours in like 10 minutes.
No worries. Anytime.
Okay.
All right. Have a great night. Thanks.
Yeah, you too. Thanks. Bye.
Sorry it was such a challenge. You bet. Bye now.
Thanks.